Hello, everyone. My name is Mangda, and I would love to introduce you all to Miss Joy. I am so excited to be in conversation with Miss Joy. I have been familiar with your work through our mutual volunteer work in the Laotian communities. And before we really get into it, would you like to just share a little bit about who you are and what you've been up to?
Yes, Sabaidi, everyone.
Surviving.
Um, Thank you so much for having me, Mingda. This is a really great platform to share what's really near and dear to my heart. I absolutely love the community, and I love that you're able to share this platform with everyone, especially along this topic. Being a second generation Lao American has really helped me with my professional career as well as helped me grow spiritually. I feel that in order for me to navigate in this physical life, like having my Lao roots is so essential to me, like flowing the way that I do, because I feel that our ancestors are flowing, within us. And so I have been in Las Vegas since 2001, and I moved out here to pursue my DJing career. And it's been really fulfilling to do what I love. I also enjoy volunteering with different nonprofit organizations. Whenever I'm called to be of service, it doesn't matter which community it is, I am always open.
Remember when I first met you, I just thought, oh my gosh, like you're such a bright light and you're so
Yeah.
poetic. Yes, and especially a lot in the Lao communities, I haven't met other female DJs. And I was like, you know what's so cool? Because you have really taken your own path. And so I'm really curious, really, what was your motivation and what helped you really fuel in that direction to go towards your passion?
Thank you for that deeply rooted question. I honestly feel that it all began pretty much when I was born. I know this sounds really strange, but I feel like inside my womb, my parents, like my mother, she and father, they didn't come so far and almost got killed, as refugees trying to, cross the Mekong River just so that I can be, um, I guess, mediocre. I didn't know that sounds like really pop culture ish and silly, but what I mean by that is like they didn't like almost die just so that I can just live an unfulfilling life. I understand that it took them a lot of passion to get to the US, and I wanted to live in passion. And I knew that from a very, very young age that I wanted to give back in some shape or form. I knew that I wanted to be of servitude of some sort of way. And music has always been something that was like my refuge. It was something that it just gives me like goosebumps just like talking about it. It's like my meditation, music, dancing, and through this journey of just self-healing through music and dancing, I wanted to serve as a DJ. When I turned 19, I was on a dance floor. I was going through a huge pivotal point in my very young adult life. It seems like it was so long ago. And I knew that I was like, I want to do what this DJ is doing, which is make people happy, be in the moment, dance, feeling free, because I feel like in my women body that I'm asked to have a lot of restraint, as a woman, the way, my mom is very poised and she always says, as a woman, you have to be XYZ. You can't be this way and that. We can't dress that way. Or, she was also a school teacher. So she's like the biggest influence in my life. And I'm so grateful that she is like my best friend. She's like my ride or die, like we still
Mm-hmm.
today have amazing laughs together, and I am a reflection of her. So although she had chosen a very I would say kind of cookie cutter, like did everything her parents told her to do, I went the opposite route by like taking her fire and aptitude and just saying like I'm going to take control of what I want in this lifetime. on this US land. She always reminds me because I'm an American, I have a lot of privilege, you know, and that's okay,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mhm.
Wow, it's so cool too because I feel a similar sentiment where same thing with my dad and his family surviving to get here, being in the refugee camps. The stories are so intense, like being shot at, all the things in which that they witnessed and experienced. And when I hear these stories, I'm an American too. I was born here and I watched my parents do the same thing where they didn't have a choice to do anything else but work in the factories. They didn't have any other choices but to survive and take care of their kids. And for me, I watch that and I feel like one of my greatest responsibilities is really trying to fulfill that light as well, is to be of service, is to do the healing. So I feel you. It feels like almost a sense of legacy, like moving through your parents to continue this thread of light and just joy. I mean, your DJ name is Miss Joy. How did that even happen?
Yeah, oh my God, I love telling the story. So I
Okay.
my parents, they were brought over to America by Mama and Papa, who were missionaries at a church, and Mama and Papa were like the priest and the pastor at this church, and they had brought over a lot of Lao families. And when my mom was pregnant with me, they literally wrote like all these different names on the board, like, okay, what should we name her daughter? Because I'm the only one that has like a American name, and my siblings that were born in Laos, in Thailand, and the refugee camp, they have Lao names. So my name came up as Joy Christine, Nyao Sivat. And so I feel like their joy was just like pulsating through my mom's womb, through every cell. And don't want to not say that I did not live with a lot of like inner torment and like processing a lot of emotional grief, because I feel like I'm a very sensitive person. But I use that to translate, what it means to be happy in this moment, in my joy, just to be present, with the ability to use music as a way to shapeshift energy.
I think that's so amazing because music is so powerful. Music is something that changes and expands moods or experiences. And to do that collectively is so beautiful. And it sounds like this is something that you are so passionate about and witnessing just these moments collectively with people that they're having individually and together. And what are some of your favorite moments when you're shape shifting? And can you explain a little bit more about that?
Well, what comes to mind is I often will tell people, like, I feel like as a Vegas DJ, there might be a certain look or a lifestyle. I literally DJ for like kids and parents and like babies. And when I see babies dancing, 'cause I work in like these ultra lounges, these like very high end like restaurants on the casino properties. And to me, like whether if the baby is dancing or like, someone that is within our age circle is dancing, it all is the same, doing a nightclub, working for a nonprofit organization. It all is the same thing for me. So I love to DJ for all types of people. And I feel that it is really humbling to be able to share what I love and be able to connect people of all ages. I don't ever want to make anyone feel like they're left out within any age group or like genre. I try to be able to play something that everyone can enjoy. It probably comes from being like such a people pleaser. But it's almost like my superhuman gift that my mom, who is a very loving and giving, like just amazing person in the way that she gives, like I like to do that with my work.
It sounds like that's something that, again, I continue to say this, has brought you so much joy and fulfillment and meaning, and it's of service. And I'm curious if there's anything that you would want to suggest because I personally know a lot of creative people. And I also know a lot of people that have never risked going in these certain directions of fear of all of the things that are scary. Maybe you don't make enough money, maybe you can't make a living off of it. And this is something that you've been able to do successfully. So, this is something that I'm curious if you can maybe, I don't know, share about how this worked out for you or any words that may be encouraging for other people that maybe are too scared to pursue more creative or artistic paths in their lives, or if they're even just curious about doing it.
So I feel like to be creative is part of our human right, and that everyone is creative in their own way, whether if it's, let's say, if they choose like higher education and they find creativity in the way that they serve, or through music or arts. The most important thing is to just follow your heart and your intuition, which can be very scary sometimes because a lot of times the ego or outside influences will tell you how to live and walk your path. And I think that the essential thing is just to know that, like, all it takes is just like one step at a time to be very mindful and intentional and really feel out in your body like what makes you happy. Because I connected dancing as a huge way of like liberating myself, my spiritual self. I was able to understand that dancing and DJing, it went hand in hand, and that was something that I wanted to do. I did go to college when I turned 18 because I was out of school and I was like, okay, if I'm still doing the same thing that I am, which is going to parties and having a good time, I'm gonna get my ass back to school because maybe maybe I'm just having too much fun. But when I went to college, I was not very pleased with how the room was ran. I felt like I was spending my money on higher ed where I did not have motivation or respect in how the teacher handled the class. I had, some teachers that spoke to their students in a very kind and sweet way, and then there are some that were just super bossy and kind of belittling. And I thought that maturity would be different in the teaching abilities in college, but people are just people, right? So I just started to surround myself with the people that match my vibe and my energy, and that has always been nightlife.
Mm. Yeah, it sounds like it just really was you listening to yourself and following your own heart and following what was really in alignment with you. And every time that I see you sharing your work or just showing up in community, I mean, you're so full of light. And of course, like we know that you're a multidimensional person, as you had mentioned already, it doesn't mean that you haven't gone through that turmoil or that grief. So, is there anything that maybe you would share with us that has helped you to continue to foster this light and this sense of meaning and this sense of purpose? Is something that I continue to be very just admirable of.
Thank you so much for being so sweet with your words. It means a lot to me. Um, I feel that prayer is really important, and prayer, what it can look like is self-talk. Prayer can look like writing in my journal. Um, it could be like dancing, just being mindful within my body and how I connect with other people could be prayer. When I find that my sensory is open and I have compassion and awareness, I feel that I'm able to navigate what this life has in store for me. And it's always changing, life can be so uh, mysterious because there's so many different paths, and all of them are great, at whatever life part of your life that you choose them. So I would always say that if someone is on their dying bed and then they realize what they want and the truth, that moment is really eternal, because we are just this form of energy, and the overall topic is impermanence. And part of that is my idea that no matter when you discover what your passion is, that moment is eternal, and you just follow that little bit of moment to moment to moment to the next, to the next, you know. And sometimes in my career I have felt like stagnant, or I had felt that my ego was attacking me, saying, you're not good enough, you need to be further in your career, you need to do XYZ. And what I'm really mirroring is the material part of, you know, what this physical life has to offer, but focusing on your core, you know, your heart, um, is relevant in all stages and everything, not just career, just being very true with yourself. If that doesn't sound so cliche.
Oh, I think it's such a good reminder for us because I think so many of us, especially now, are operating out of our heads and we're just constantly distracted and we're constantly just filled with other people's opinions or thoughts or ideas. And I think that so many of us seem disconnected from ourselves, you know, and disconnected from our lives. So I think it's a really great reminder for us to reconnect. And I really appreciate the way in which that you brought permanence to impermanence by having that internal timestamp on these present moments that you're just sharing. I think that's so beautiful and so inspiring. And pausing to cherish what you're experiencing, recognize like this journey instead of just that end thing or that end goal or like that how your life needs to look exactly at that moment. So yeah, I really appreciate the way in which that you spoke that. And that is something that you had asked me right before we started this conversation is what was the intention for this? What has really sparked me to want to have these conversations? And for me in my work, I'm constantly thinking about impermanence. I'm constantly thinking about our lives. I'm constantly thinking about the way in which that we're experiencing life. And I have just recognized throughout the past years of doing this that I'm continually having very interesting conversations with individuals, or that there's so much to offer through conversation. There's so much transmission that can happen by just chatting with you today or chatting with someone else. And I think that we could utilize just the act of speaking to potentially connect with other people, you know, that may be listening, potentially share information to inspire whatever it may be. And because I'm very passionate about impermanence, in the
Mm,
sense in which that it's a reality that I think that so many of us are not in touch with as well. And through my work, through my offerings, I have witnessed so much transformation with folks that have really begun to integrate these ideals or just this remembrance and how it's shifted the way in which that they spend their days, their time, how they are in relation with other people. And so I think for me, it's really to share space and uplift individuals that I don't tend to hear their perspectives all the time. I don't hear your heart expressed as much. And that's really what it is. It's a sense of just connection in these conversations.
you're very wise, and I think that you've taken on an incredible job. Just to take this out of your professional work to do for your personal is really amazing. It's just like it blows my mind. Like, wow, this is so cool. Like, amazing. Thank you so much for the introduction. I want to ask one more question. What do you do professionally? Because I was curious how, you know, it aligned with this topic.
My background is in the creative arts, and I've always been into like mysticism and into like the healing arts and all of that. And I've always been interested in life, but I ended up helping my mother pass. And so it was such an intimate experience with the dying process and with death. And I've experienced loss before this in many forms, but this was just the most intimate in every way, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And that changed my life. It was a life changing moment to be with a dying body, to be with your mother. You know, I know it's a lot. It's a lot. And from that, I have cultivated this connection and understanding and relationship with death, with impermanence in a way that I never would have imagined, I would have never imagined. And through that work, it all started right before the pandemic. And I was just so driven and so passionate about reimagine the way in which that we do understand the end of life, because my experience was very challenging and there were so many things that I think that could have been a much better experience for myself and others. And it really began as wanting to share this, to have conversations and to be more supported in the experience. And the pandemic hit. So, Miss Joy, literally, I went from just thinking we'd start having like these salons to hosting events like every month and doing grief work with folks and really like doing like workshops around these topics. And
Oh my God.
it's
So
been incredible.
how amazing.
Mhm.
I love this project, and I feel like it's going to create so much synergy within a community to help everyone heal, which is something that we always need, and especially during pandemic when death was so heightened.
Curious too if you've had just any kinds of experiences with the end of life, or if anything is coming up for you in relation to this topic and maybe what we've been going through.
Yes. Well, when you were telling me about your mother passed, I just have a lot of like deep compassion and like I would say empathy, but I don't know how it feels like because my mother is still alive.
Mm-hmm.
But just, thinking what you went through and how strong you are standing here. And I'm sure that, even though you have this like really graceful and beautiful, like uplifted smile, that I also acknowledge that, there were like sad times too. And they're all the same, right? When you're celebrating a life. And so I wanted to mention that. And also my grandmother, when she passed away, she had been bedridden for quite some time, and she had a few strokes. And so when I was visiting her in Seattle, it, I I told my grandma, I said, um, "Mitao, budong yan de, it's okay, it's okay, budong yan." And she would always be afraid and call out in the middle of the night that someone was coming to get her. And she was holding on to this physical world for dear life. But it was time for her to go. I like was massaging her legs, her feet, because she's like bedridden. So her veins are all like purple, and like her feet's all swollen. And I know that that isn't a life that she wants to. Well, I don't know if I know that for sure because she held on for so long, right? And she passed at 93. So like 2 weeks later, uh, I had to come back because she had passed away, and we, had her funeral and stuff. But um, I don't know, like it's really interesting when someone that you love so much, when they pass. But my mom has always, taught me that it's just a natural part of life. And although that sounds so simple, you know, oh, it's just life. And in Buddhism, the monk says when you die, you go to your first home. And that
Mm-hmm.
sounds really comfortable. Like it sounds comfortable to be like, oh, I'm just going to my first home. Bye.
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
it's we believe in incarnation, and so with all those different ceremonies and blessings and prayers, I feel like that's how I navigate through my grief. I definitely allow grief to be present. I allow any emotional um, feeling to come up. I used to hide my emotions, but it's really hard. So I just stopped. If I feel like crying, I'll just like cry, and it helps me process what I'm hearing and feeling, and it allows me to act in spirit, that like I am actually fully listening or seeing or witnessing whatever it is, and however I translate it is it's just fine. Mhm.
And when you brought up, it may sound simple. This is so much of my work too, is to go back to the simplicity, go back to what just is so human. And there's so many things that you had shared where, again, I keep going back into this modern world because I have friends that I know or people that I see or what we continue to hear in the media is how much people are suffering, how much young people are suffering, and how much that we aren't going back to a lot of these simple things in terms of to feel our emotion. It's too easy to distract or get away or escape it right now more than ever, I think. And that's the medicine. Like your entire process that you're talking about was so beautiful. And there's so many points where that's essentially what I'm constantly trying to teach is how do we integrate grief into our lives as like a natural part of our existence because it's been with us throughout all time. How do we see death as a natural part of life because it's been with us all through time. It's been alongside the living, and when you're sharing about your grandmother, that it just so intuitively came to you to just say it's okay to let go, it's okay to go. That's a huge part of end of life doula work or death doula work is really being with people in those emotional worlds to say it is okay to go. And I think that we have so much stigma in the industries that we navigate, and these industries may have different perspectives. And unfortunately, I think that it's really led to a lot of folks seeing death as a failure
Mm.
in some cases, and death as maybe even a surprise for people. And I think that what you're talking about is just so intuitively natural. And I think that's something that I'm trying to constantly teach is going back to that of how can we see that again? Because we've gone so far away, you know?
Um, I think that maybe an intelligent approach, which comes from still, the feeling aspect of how I process things and what we can promote and share is just having compassion, and self-compassion is the big one, right? Because when you have lost, it's like, well, what about me? That person isn't there essentially to be there for me. So having self-compassion, like for me, not having my grandmother or the different people that have passed in my life, I often will channel like, okay, it's not about you, it's really about the moment of celebrating this human being. And it's completely okay to cry and to mourn. Mourning process is very crucial and very important, but it's the holding on to the what if, oh, why didn't I, and all these
Mm,
other existential things that I feel like it comes from self, comes from the personal want, and that's okay. you know and that's why I think that this talk about impermanence is so important, because if you tend to mute yourself and your emotions for too long, it becomes physical ailments, right? It becomes like stress and all these other ugly things that do not take care of our mind, body, and spirit. So I would say that if a person that is grieving, and I love the work that you do, but for others who are listening to this and that someone is grieving, that just to reach out to them, if you felt that maybe they were a little bit more quiet at a funeral, and just talk to them, but allow people their space too,
mhm,
because everyone heals in different ways. I also find that it could be a way for them to dig deep into who they are and to, continue their journey of, fulfillment, whatever that
Mm-hmm.
may be. A lot of it could be a lot of triggers, and and that's okay. I love the work that you do, and I think it's fantastic that you're providing the space for people and getting together with your groups.
Thank you. And thank you too for just naming that, because just to be clear, yes, I'm mirroring what you're saying. Our grief is not going to look like everyone else's. And it doesn't mean something's wrong if you're not expressing it, or if you don't express it for some time. Like, that's a very important part to be very clear about, is like, that doesn't mean something's wrong with someone. And I think that's what's so interesting about grief, and such a complex topic, is it's not a prescription for everyone. Everyone is so different, and everyone has so many different layers of grief. I do want to talk a little bit more about how you view your life and the impermanence, and if there's particular parts that you really want to be focused on while you're alive, and what it means to you when you think of your end of life, and how does that impact your living today.
Yeah. That question, it just like, I feel like it just sits in my belly like, so warm, you know. Um, how I want to live my life is through this moral compass that I know that every choice that I've made, whether if it's the little itty bitty or like the big small things, that I am acting out of spirit and knowing that I am doing what is the right thing to do. And I know that that seems difficult. And the reason why this is very important to me is because I feel that it comes with my own maturity to understand that I can't have everything that I want, and nor do I think that that is available to any human being, that wanting is another part of grasping on to um, impermanence, that everything is fleeting. Um, but this moment right now, as long as I am being mindful throughout everything that I do, I know that distractions with my electronics, you know, is is part of that push and pull. But I love that when I am with my loved ones, or if I'm like at work, um, I'm focusing on what is in front of me, and that's how I get through a lot of uh, my anxiety, pain, if I have a heartbroken moment, just focusing on what's in front of me is very, very crucial. And I hope that when I'm, passing through this lifetime on my dying bed, that I just focus on what's in front of me. And then I would hope that it's my loved ones that are in front of me, till that day. Um, so yeah, and not a really super defined answer, but just to be really present and to watch my mind, watch my speech. That's very important. How I communicate with others, especially how I communicate to myself. A lot of self-doubt I had, um, and it still shows up, and that's okay. It's there to remind me of where my ego is within my body, and that's okay. But how I process it throughout my day and how I relate with others, I want to always be mindful and thoughtful and make sure that I am not so hyper focused on just me, that I can, see the person, next to me, and just have full awareness. I love that when people talk to me, that I'm like looking right in their eyes, like in their soul, you know? Like just like the most random conversations, I'm not afraid to talk to people. And it's because, everyone is my brothers and sisters. There are moments when I do see that my guard is up. And that's when I have to check myself and really spend the quality time for me to figure out, what is it that you need? Do you need sleep? Do you need rest? Do you need food?
Mm-hmm.
Just need
Mm-hmm.
to decompress. I'm quite the loner for being a very outgoing and like for an entertainment person. Like I'm such a loner because I spend a lot of time decompressing. It's like my favorite thing. Like, let me just decompress so I can give you guys this energy back,
Yes, that makes sense. And I hear that a lot with people too that are in the entertainment industries or anything more public facing is they can be very social, but they need to just recharge. They need to be super internal and like replenish and tend to themselves. So I
Yeah.
think that's something I've heard a lot of. And I think everything you're sharing is it sounds like a spiritual practice in every moment of your life, Miss Joy. It sounds like you are just really walking with spirit in every breath and every conversation and every interaction. It sounds so beautiful because it sounds like you really emphasize the presence. And when you're talking about looking into people's eyes, and there's, I'm sure you've had so many experiences where people are like uncomfortable because it's so intimate, but it's a form of connection to be
Yeah.
looking and meeting eyes. And yeah, I bet that's pretty funny sometimes for you when people are probably like, whoa.
Yeah. And I honestly feel like, I don't know what it is, but like I feel like the pandemic, because we've been in this bubble of a pandemic, that when people are out and talking, that they really do want to connect with other people, like that they feel starved for this human connection.
I hope that continues to grow larger and larger and larger because we have been so just removed from each other. And I hope that that's exactly what we need is more connection in every form. I feel like I'm very interested in your spiritual practice. You've mentioned that you use a lot of prayer and a lot of and prayer in so many different forms, dance and writing and all of this. Do you feel like you utilize rituals in your days or practices that really could be helpful for others maybe to tap into this interconnection and presence with themselves and each other?
Yes. Um, I feel that when the topic comes up for like spirituality and practice, it could be a little bit how do I say, like it looks different for everybody, so it's like a touchy
Mhm.
subject because some people practice in very, I would say, religious ways,
Mhm.
whether if it's like praying like 2 or 3 times a day, or going to a physical building that is a church or a temple or something. But my mother told me that prayer, and practicing speaking to God and having my relationship with God can be anywhere. And I really took that literal. I was like, really? I took it literally, like you don't have to go to the temple. Like you can just pray at home. You
Mhm.
can have a relationship and talk to God anywhere. And I'm like, okay, and it's true. Like, don't you ever just go in nature and just be like, wow, like this is
Yes,
God's like creation, right?
yes,
Like,
yes.
and sometimes those are like simple reminders if your brick and mortar, like this concrete jungle is like too much. Like being out in nature and seeing something as simple as like wildlife is
Yeah.
could help you get in touch with prayer. I want to remind everyone that our we have our ancestors DNA in us, so we're not too far, from nature and all these different spiritual awakenings. It's part of our being, and you just have to like tap into it. And this is not open like source like news where like you turn on the news and they're talking about spirituality. You have to really seek out what it means to you and how it can serve you. But I always feel like whenever you're ready, it's always
Mm-hmm.
available.
Yeah, and it sounds like you have a relationship with ancestors, and you've mentioned this a few times today. Would you
Yeah.
like to share a little bit about that?
Yes. I I feel like I've had visions of my ancestors like in the jungle cooking on the
Mm,
stove and like just doing like daily things. And in my spiritual journey, I saw this vision and it seemed so simple. Why was it that I was being shown this? And I was really being shown that, my ancestors were always with me and doing the daily tasks, doing the daily things, and I don't have to go too far and reach outside of myself to know that my everyday living is good enough. Like me making myself hot tea is good enough.
mhm, mhm.
Like the simple things, like girl, did you feed yourself? Yes. Yes. I made myself food. I remember to
Mhm,
drink water. Like the simple
mhm,
things. That's what's
mhm.
important.
That's so cool. I love that you're so connected to that and that simplicity. And I think that's again such a beautiful reminder for all of us where it can just be in the seemingly mundane that can be so powerful or just so present or just so human. It's just being.
Yes. Oh my
Hmm.
God. Like that's thank you, God, that we get to live this. Right? It's so simple and like thank you. Like, oh, okay.
Mhm. One of my intentions for really talking to you, especially in the Lao community, is you're such a bright light in the Lao community. You're such a source of inspiration and of our generations and the generations, after us to continue to see that we can live a life in alignment with what we really want to be doing, however that is expressed. So I'm really grateful that you were so open and so giving of your inner world and your practices and your heart. And Joy, you're so wise, and I would love to continue to learn from you and for us to
Yeah.
hear from you, to bring it back down, to ground us and to remember the most important parts of our lives can be really in those moments, those simple moments.
Thank you for those very kind words. That I feel like I am a mirror of you. So I look
Mm,
forward to all the wonderful things that you are doing and sharing for
mm.
all of our communities. I think the work that you're doing is fantastic. And every time I see what you post online, I'm like, wow, she's like really talking in spirit and she's outspoken. It's amazing.
Yes, and that's the thing
For it. I'm like,
too.
yes, you're speaking my
Thank
language.
you.
Yeah. Like I'm like,
Yes.
I'm seeing this. I'm like, other people are seeing this. This is so cool. It's just like you're just spreading the good vibes.
Why not at this point? And if there's anything last that you'd like to share, we can have this moment for you.
And yes, I want to share that the legacy that I wish to leave behind is just to know that my human connection with each person that I come across is felt as something real. Like
Mm,
that is all I want to leave behind, is just to know that like it was real. So, and I feel that it's real. So thank you so much for having
mm.
me.
Thank you.